Let's move on to week 3. Carmen is in search for a black friend so she can learn more about the black culture. This entire time Carmen has basically just been enjoying being in her like blackface just because she's like, I want to experience being black, but like I said, not like her daughter Rose trying to really understand the struggles. She just likes being in it. Now in week 3, she's trying to understand the struggles of what it's like being black in her blackface. Like I said, Nick really needed this show. I'm gonna get to that at the end. But Brian and Renee talked to Nick about the watch that he brought in the last episode. I didn't mention it because it was a quite minor thing in week 2. But in week 2, Nick had brought a watch from the mall and it was $150, and his parents found out that he bought this $150 watch. He used up all his money to buy a $150 watch. And they were mad at him. He was making very poor money decisions, but they were also like, you know, Nick, you're putting yourself at risk, because especially like being black and you having, I get what they were trying to say, but you having too much nice stuff on you and things like that. You know, what if the police stops you and asks you why you have so much money on you, or why you have so many nice things on you? They're gonna put you and label you as a stereotype. In the end, they go back to the mall and make Nick take back the watch that he had brought from the store. And Bruno and Carmen also in this episode go to a white saloon type of thing, and Carmen is starting to understand and feel what it's like being black in a predominantly white space and not feeling wanted. Especially me, I've grown up in like I said, white area, and I remember when I was a little girl, we would go out to eat, like me and my family, but all the white people in the restaurant would be looking at us like, what are those black folks doing in here? So I guess that's what Carmen was like. She felt a sense of not being wanted there. Bruno is still ignorant. I think Bruno is one of the most ignorant people I have ever seen in my entire life. And if someone's more ignorant than Bruno, how come? Like, I didn't even think that was possible. But Bruno is still being very ignorant to the situation, and he's like, I'm not here for the racism. I'm here to have a good time. I thought your whole thing on being on the show was to understand what it's like being the opposite race, but you still want to be ignorant. Okay. Later in the episode, Carmen goes out with Deanna, which is the lady that she met earlier in the episode and became friends with, into like this black excellence thing. Carmen is still like her regular white self while Bruno is in his blackface. And Deanna basically tries to explain to Carmen that people are ticked off because they kind of went into an area that was like pro-black and like don't want like white people in the area. Deanna was basically trying to explain to Carmen that because you're a white woman and he's up in here bringing a white woman, Bruno, being in his blackface, you know, they feel some sort of like ugh to you. Bruno, I think this is the only time he started to realize something in this show and make him feel some kind of way. He was like, Carmen, the air is thick, don't you feel it, like that we're not wanted here? Carmen was like sad and she was crying because she was like, oh my gosh, like it's so uncomfortable and I've never been so scared that, you know, people don't really want me here. You have to watch that episode to understand what I'm talking about, because I really don't want to go into detail. But Deanna basically kind of just sums up Carmen was feeling. She basically tries to explain that to Carmen, and Carmen kind of gets some enlightenment and something of that sort. Week 4, and this week Nick goes to the etiquette class, his white face, and Rose as well, but just regular Rose. They later in the episode invite the kids over to the house, and the kids find out that Nick is really black because they're like snooping around in his room, and they're like, this isn't really, this isn't white people stuff. Like they were like literally making suspicions that Nick was black, and Nick then told them that he was black. And these kids are so annoying. I'm not even gonna talk about it. Nick in this episode allows these white kids to say the N-word. One of the white girls literally has more knowledge about this than Nick, because she's like telling all the white, she's telling the white guys that want to say, like, guys, you guys shouldn't say the N-word, and they're like, well, Nick said we could say it, so we can say it, because Nick is allowing these kids to say it. Nick's whole thing is that he doesn't see color and everyone should be cool. Okay, but we haven't gotten that far as a society to the point where we're like, you know, we love everyone no matter what the race is. We all love everybody, because even 17 years later after that show has aired, there are still, you know, problems in the society about inequality and all this stuff. Although we would love to live in a utopia society, we don't live in a utopia society. You can't, and even if we did live in a utopia society, no one would ever say the N-word in a utopia society. Of course, later in this episode, his parents find out that he allowed these white kids to say the N-word. And his parents are upset with him, but they're a little bit upset with themselves for not really teaching Nick properly like they thought they did. Because of this issue, Nick and Brian goes to a barbershop. Brian takes Nick to a black barbershop, not just to get a haircut, but also so he can listen to someone else's point of view, because he has been yelled at about the whole watch thing and now this. Brian is like, maybe he's not listening to me and Renee, so let me take him to somebody else so he can get a little bit more insight. That's what he does. And also, Rose goes to her poetry class, and she is talking about in her understanding of being black. Now me, I understood what Rose was trying to say about what is like her experience about being black on the show. Obviously I'm doing quotes because they're not really black, like Rose is not really black, but you get the point. I understood what she was saying, but everyone kind of took it out of context of what she was saying. I'm gonna say like what everyone was saying and what she said. One of the women in the show actually explained what Rose was trying to say, and Rose was like, yes, that's what I meant. So basically she said that black people have this like family and community, and we know our roots. But like I said, everyone took that out of context, so they were like, you know, African Americans, we don't really know our history because of slavery, how our history has been lost. But like I said, one of the black women was explaining and trying to say and told them so everyone could understand. So she was saying, as black people, there could be a room just full of white people, but if we see another like black person across the room, that's like oh, I see you, and we're like together, you know. It's like togetherness and bondage. That what Rose was trying to say, and then the black woman explained it, and everyone was like, oh, okay, we get what Rose was trying to say, because they didn't really understand what Rose was trying to say. And then also later in this episode, Brian and Renee also talked to the kids from the etiquette class about the N-word and the history of the N-word and why they should not use it, you know. And they were kind of about to pick a fight with his parents, because they're like, well, Nick said we could say it. You don't understand the situation. And you could tell they were getting quite frustrated with this white kid for saying that. But they got it all situated and sorted out. So week 5. In this week, Renee is on the look for a white friend, because pretty much everyone in the house has found a friend of the opposite race, or at least know of someone from the opposite race. Renee is still the only one that doesn't really have a friend. So she goes out, that's her task for herself, and she finds someone who she can semi-connect with. And also, Bruno in this episode goes down the street as a black man, you know, to see down the street that he usually typically goes down to see if he would get any other different remarks. Like I said earlier in the video, Bruno's main thing is that he really wants someone to call him the N-word. I don't know why he wants someone to call him that so badly while he's in his black makeup. His whole thing is like, well, I don't see any racism, because Bruno's whole thing is that, you know, people search for racism. And that's why we can't solve anything, because people are always in the spaces where they're trying to look for racism. Like back in the earlier week, him and Brian had went out to the store. Brian was his regular black self, and then Bruno was in his black makeup in the store, because Brian has been very frustrated with Bruno this entire time, because he's trying to like tell Brian that he needs to pick up the small social cues when it comes to the racism. Bruno is still very ignorant to the whole thing, because they were in the store and one of the store clerks kept coming up to them and was like, hey, do you need any help? And Bruno took that as, oh, they're just trying to help us, so, you know, if we need any help. But obviously that's not what that was. Brian was like, he is so ignorant, like so oblivious. What was really happening was they kept coming up to us to make sure we weren't stealing anything. Like, even the small cues of racism, Bruno can't even pick that up, you know, because his whole thing is like, we have to stop looking for racism, because if you keep looking for racism, then it's just gonna keep existing. So very ignorant, all in all. Later that night, Renee goes out with one of her white friends that she had met earlier in that day that she really connected with. This is when she feels a sense of relief that she's found the right one, because they were at like the place, like the restaurant they were at, and race just somehow slipped into the conversation. One white man was being ignorant. The white friend was like not putting up with any of that. Like, she was like, why would you say that, you know? And that's when Renee was like, oh yeah, no, she, you know, she doesn't she's not like that, and I can trust her. And also she reveals to the white friend that she is not white, she's black. And then end of the show, week 6 is mainly just more so reflection. So now I want to talk about the development and the learning of each and everybody. So Brian didn't necessarily learn much, but he did like notice how much privilege he got for being white, especially, and Renee as well. They kind of go hand in hand. So Nick, it was more so of Nick learning what it's like being black than white more than anything. I think the person who was in their face makeup the least was Nick. The only time he really was in it was to go out to the etiquette class, and he did some photography in the street, but mainly more so for his etiquette class. Nick, you know, he has been so ignorant and oblivious to his own self as a black person, that this was more so of a self-learning situation for Nick, because he finally learned, like, he really learned, you know, the history of the N-word, and, you know, not allowing everyone to say it. Like, basically eye-opening for Nick to be black. Like, Nick could care less about being in his white face. Like, he really didn't like being in it that much anyway. Bruno, he stayed ignorant the whole time, and, you know, he got worse as the show went on. Like, his ignorance just somehow became to go worse. Like, it just got worse and worse and worse as the show went on. And, you know, even people in the comments were like, just, you don't understand how much Bruno makes my blood boil. I'm like, I get you. Carmen definitely learned that black people aren't treated fairly, and how much the black community struggles living in white America. Her thing, basically, what she basically learned is like the struggles of, you know, like, oh, why can't they get a job just because of the color of their skin. Like, she really starts to learn that. And that's some, you know, eye-opening stuff for Carmen. But Rose, I think, is the person who learned the most. Like, she learned the most, she grew the most, she learned a lot from this project actually. And basically Rose's main thing was that she was very, very willing to learn about black issues, and she was very open-minded the whole time. And she would definitely learn from like Renee and Brian and the people from the poetry class to help her understand black issues and what causes these issues. Like I said in the beginning of the video, she really wanted to understand the science. So either from Renee and Brian or the poetry class, and people coming to the house and like they're speaking about their issues and growing up black and everything like that, she's really trying to understand. Although she's like, I can't relate, I really want to understand as much as I can, because if I understand, I can make the world a better place, you know. And that's why I really like Rose, because she's very opening, and she really wanted to understand these issues and the science behind being black. That is the end of this review for Black White. I filmed literally another almost 30-minute video. I thought I was never gonna do this again. I did. But anyways, I really hope you guys like this video. I'm almost at 100 subscribers. I don't know if I'll be at 100 by the time this is uploaded, but if not, let's get me to 100. And if I am, praise God. Thank you guys so much, and I really hope you guys like this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, especially subscribe. And I hope that you have a good day. Bye.